All right, welcome. Today, we are pulling back the curtain and heading straight onto the factory floor. Why? Because we're going to figure out one of the most important numbers in business. What does it really cost to make something? You know, that number is the secret starting point for every single price tag you see. So, let's dive in.
Really think about it. When you buy a phone, or a chair, or even just a t-shirt, the price you pay is kind of the end of this long, complicated story. But that story always starts with one simple question. What was the real, all-in cost for the factory that actually made it? That's the puzzle we're going to solve today.
So here's our game plan. We'll start with why this matters. Then we'll break down the 3 core ingredients of any production cost. After that, we'll follow the accounting recipe to put it all together with a real-world example. And finally, we'll see how that final cost number connects all the way to profit.
Look, for any business that actually makes stuff, you can't just guess your costs. That's a recipe for disaster. You need a very specific financial tool to track every single cent. And this isn't just some boring accounting exercise. It's the absolute bedrock of the business. Without this number, you have no idea how to set a price, and you definitely have no idea if you're even making any money.
So, how in the world do we track all this? Well, the good news is that every single manufacturing cost, no matter how big or small, can be sorted into one of just 3 essential categories. I like to think of them as the core ingredients for our cost recipe.
First up, we have direct materials. Now, this is the obvious stuff, right? It's the wood that makes up the chair, the cotton for the t-shirt, the metal and glass that go into the phone. It's all the raw stuff you can physically see and touch in the final product.
Next, there's direct labor. These are the wages you pay to the people who are literally hands-on, the ones physically turning those raw materials into a finished product. We're talking about the person operating the sewing machine or the worker assembling parts on the factory line.
And finally, we get to the trickiest one, manufacturing overheads. This is basically the everything else bucket. It's all the costs that are absolutely essential to run the factory, but they aren't directly part of the final product. Think about things like the electricity for the machines, the rent for the factory building, or even the salary of the factory supervisor.
Let's make this super simple. Think about baking a cake. Your direct materials? Well, that's easy. Flour, sugar, eggs. The direct labor? That's the baker, putting in the work. And the overheads? That's all the other stuff you need. The electricity for the oven, the rent for the kitchen space. You absolutely cannot bake that cake without all 3.
Okay, so we know our ingredients. Now we just need the recipe to combine them correctly. In the world of accounting, that recipe is a set of really structured documents, and the main one is called the production cost statement. This is going to be our blueprint for getting to that final number.
And here it is. This is our blueprint. Now, don't worry about reading every single line. Just look at the structure. It's a standard template that's designed to neatly organize those 3 core costs we just talked about. We're going to see how we fill in these blanks, line by line, to get to our total manufacturing cost.
All right, that's enough theory. Let's make this real. We're going to take the financial data for a fictional company, we'll call them LU6 Designer Products, and we're going to build their production cost statement together, step by step.
First up, direct materials. The logic here is actually pretty simple. As you can see, we start with the materials we already had, our opening inventory. Then we add everything we bought plus shipping, and then, and this is key, we subtract the value of whatever we didn't use, which is our closing inventory.
And that simple math gives us our first key number, $130,555. That is the total cost of all the raw materials that actually went into this year's production. Let's go ahead and lock that in. So, now we take that number we just calculated and we plug it right into our main statement. See it there? Right at the top. Direct material costs. Okay, 1 ingredient down, 2 more to go.
Let's keep this moving. Next ingredient, direct labor. To get this number, we add up not just the basic factory wages, but also all the other related employee costs, like pensions and medical aid. This gives us the total cost of our hands-on workforce.
Which brings us to our second key figure, $189,170. Perfect. We've now accounted for all the materials and all the hands-on labor. Just one piece of the puzzle left. And finally, we tackled those overheads. This is almost always the longest list. Here, we're adding up everything from indirect materials like cleaning supplies to indirect labor like supervisors' salaries, all the way down to the factory's electricity bill and even the wear and tear on the machinery. And there it is, the big one.
After we add our 3 core costs together and, make a little adjustment for anything that's still half finished on the production line, we get our grand total. The all-in cost to manufacture everything for Lucian's designer products this year was $524,965. This is the number we've been working towards this whole time.
So what now? What do we actually do with this number? I mean, knowing the total cost of production is fantastic, but it's really only a means to an end. The real goal, the reason we do all this, is to find out if the company actually made any money.
And the path from this cost to actual profit is surprisingly simple. First, you take your total sales revenue for the year. Then you subtract something called the cost of goods sold, which is just the production cost of only the items you actually sold. What's left over? That's your gross profit. This second document, the trading statement, is where it all comes together. Again, don't sweat the details, just follow the story. You see that sales figure at the very top? We subtract the cost of goods sold right below it, and that number comes directly from our production cost work. That one simple subtraction gives us the bottom line. And there it is, the final payoff. Lucian's designer products made a gross profit of over $1.2 million. That's a number that would be literally impossible to calculate without first going through that whole process of finding the true cost of production.
At the end of the day, this whole process is about so much more than just numbers. It's a really powerful management tool. It's designed to help a business, and I quote, analyze their costs and prepare for future costing. It's all about looking back so you can plan forward more effectively. So, knowing your exact cost, that is the absolute foundation for making smart business decisions. But it immediately brings up the next huge question, right? Once you know precisely what it costs to make one item, how in the world do you set the price? Well, that's a whole other story. We'll tackle that one next time.